Hey everyone, and happy almost September. Oh, it's good coffee. All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this month's Q&A. I'm excited to be doing this from my old apartment. I'll explain a little bit why later. The first question is really good. It's from Jonathan Kotas. He asks, have Ukrainians began rebuilding the buildings and infrastructure destroyed by the terrorists, the Russians? That shopping mall you visited in Kyiv still lies vacant and seems like since it was attacked, stay safe and tell your friends that many of us in the US support their struggle. So actually this is a very good question. In Kyiv itself, a lot of the major buildings that were damaged, you can still see sitting partially damaged because it's so close to the front line. But in Kyiv, probably 90%, even 95, 99% of buildings have been completely rebuilt. Windows have been rebuilt. And I think part of it, it's twofold. One is so residents don't leave the country. They don't feel like they've been abandoned. I don't know if you ever heard of the broken windows theory. If you leave one broken window around your neighborhood, there'll be more and more and more. Same with graffiti. If you let one person graffiti and you don't remove it, your neighborhood ends up looking like Athens, Greece. It just more and more comes. So when place gets destroyed and the very next day you see a cleanup crew come, clean it up, they start rebuilding, people feel, you know what, I'm being taken care of. Someone's, it's still dangerous to be here, but it's a livable place, especially with infrastructure. The reason why we have lights right now, even though we had no electricity for almost 2 months recently, is one of the power stations was destroyed by Russia a few months ago, but Ukraine rebuilt it. Now we have electricity. Bagheera asks, do you get into controls, military checkpoints in Kharkiv where you have to show your passport? Is there free movement like you were used to before the full-scale invasion? So if you're going in and out of the city limits, there's definitely military checkpoints still where you have to show a passport or a document. Usually you can get away with showing a driver's license as a foreigner, but they prefer a physical passport, not a copy. Luckily, I have something called Dia on my phone, which is the Ukrainian app where you can have your actual passport on there. That's what most Ukrainians use. And yeah, you do have to show your passport when you go around. And during martial law, during the war, you were required to show any police officer or any military officer who stops you on the street your ID, just to verify who you are. Does that happen very often? Not that often, especially in the city centers where there's a lot of people. But definitely whenever I traveled somewhere more remote, like a village, the closer you get to Russia, let's say this, the more they check. I remember once I was delivering soup with the volunteers in Kharkiv all the way to a little village called like Kazan Lopan or something, right on the border, actually very close to where Ukrainian soldiers have entered Russia recently. And there, not only did we have to show our passports, but we actually had to apply for like a special pass to be able to go into those frontline villages. So yeah, there's definitely some restrictions, and you do have to show your ID. But as a civilian, if you're just living your everyday life, going to and from work, usually you're fine. Amy asks, hi Johnny, do you think people who move to West Ukraine will come back to Kharkiv eventually, or they settle in the West? And then she asks about my packing, my luggage. Amy, thank you for being a channel member, by the way. If you haven't become a channel member yet, it's a great way to support the channel, support what I do. So I think the people who moved to Lviv or to Ivano-Frankivsk or other parts of Ukraine, I guess they have probably a bigger chance of going back to Kharkiv. If that's where they're originally from, they have homes. But unfortunately, I have friends who have moved, to Europe, to Austria or to Western Europe, outside of Ukraine. And they're much older now, like their parents are much older, their grandparents are much older. It'd be really hard to see them, giving up that life. They're learning different languages now, whether it's German or, people are learning English. And I think once people have settled in, especially if they sign a long-term contract on apartments, they buy a car, they learn the language, they have local friends, especially if they get a job where the salary is much higher. I think it's hard for people to move back even after the war. But I think right now when you ask them, they all say they want to. So I think time will tell, but it is hard. As far as relocating within Ukraine, I think it's like 50-50 because, part of it makes it easier to move back, especially because you'll miss your home. I think for anyone who's never been uprooted forcefully out of your home, you really can't understand how it feels to really miss and yearn to go back. I moved many, many times. I've lived, in multiple countries, probably a dozen countries. And every time I've left, it's because I was ready to move on. An easy way to explain this would be, let's say there's a car that you really liked, and even though sometimes maybe it gives you trouble and you're like, maybe I would love to upgrade. If someone crashed into it, it was totaled and taken away from you overnight, there's a very good chance you're gonna want that same car again because you're like, man, I wish I had that car again. I wasn't done with this car yet. I have more memories to be made with this car. But if you chose to sell it on your own free will, you were ready, you had time to kind of go through the process, then it's a different story. So when people are forced to leave their homes in Kyiv, I think that creates a very strong bond where they are going to want to go back as soon as it's safe. Amy, to answer your second part of your question, this is what I travel with when I go on international trips, whether it's to Thailand or to any other country. This is made by Eagle Creek. It's a 60-liter duffel bag. It's empty now, so it's pretty small. But what I really like about it is it's a backpack and a duffel. And when it's empty, or when it's half filled, I can actually use this as carry-on luggage. And when I need to, I can really stuff it and really fit a lot. So any trip up to 3 months, this is more than enough for me. I've been very happy with it. Actually, me and my very good friend Chris, we both bought the exact same bag back in Chiang Mai in like 2015. And we were both using it, pretty much, not daily, but on all of our trips and travels since. And it's held up perfectly. I'll try to link it below, but I found it probably on Amazon or something. Trine, my loyal subscriber and commenter from Norway, Tusen Talk, Trine, she asks, where and when are you planning to go next? By the way, she has this cool icon because she's upgraded her subscription. Thank you very much. So I have a trip coming up the very first week of September 4th. I fly somewhere to another country, which means I'm gonna have to leave Ukraine by train and get to the closest airport, which is in Warsaw. There was actually 3 trains that go to Warsaw now, which is really good. One that goes directly to Warsaw, one that goes to Chelm, one that goes to like Dorobelsk or something, Dorohorsk, and actually another one that goes to Shemeshin. All very difficult to pronounce names. I am trying a different train route this time, the one to Dorohorsk, because I feel like maybe it's gonna be the most comfortable. The one directly to Warsaw is 14 hours long, which means you can't get out for 14 hours. And it's 3 people, you sleep basically 3 bunks, which seems very, very tight. The rooms are half width, so there's only 3 people per room, but I would actually rather have, 2 and 2. So we'll see how it is. Keep an eye out for the video. Channel members, you'll be able to watch this first as soon as it comes out. Nika gives me compliments and says, looking good. I can tell you've been working out. Well, thank you, Nika. Actually, I have been working out. But actually, I haven't been working out as much as I thought I would be. I thought I would be working out a lot more. But I have been doing jiu-jitsu. So I'm still technically a white belt. But I have these stripes on here now. And what this means is I'm like leveling up as a white belt. This might not mean very much to most people who don't do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it's the only martial art where every little upgrade, every single word means a lot. So I remember when I was doing some like BS martial art, like Aikido or some karate or something as a kid, after a month, they're like, okay, you get the next belt. And I'm like, I haven't learned anything. All we learned was some like weird haka things. I've been doing jiu-jitsu for 10 years. I finally got my stripes. They actually rewarded me all 3 at once because I think the coach was like, Johnny, come on, man, you've been doing this for a long time. You're just really out of shape and not consistent. But it's really lit a fire under my butt to go more consistently. I've been going Wednesdays and Saturdays now. Probably better if I went more, but honestly, like my recovery time now that I'm older is really bad. I remember I used to be able to do, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or even do a Muay Thai fight, and within a day or 2, I'd be fine. I'd be like, okay, let's go again. Now, when I do a really tough sparring session for like 3-4 days, I'm just like, my body is just destroyed. So it's good that I'm forced to slow down a bit, rely less on strength and athleticism, and like think more about strategy and skill and technique, which is what jiu-jitsu is. So a really, really good sport if you have never tried it. Steve Anelli says, hey Johnny, what makes Ukrainian people and soldiers so resilient, so determined, so passionate, and so strong to fight for their land and freedom from tyranny? What makes them so different from Russians? What are your experiences? I can absolutely tell you that they are very different people. Even though Ukrainians and Russians share a lot in similarities in culture, language, upbringing, especially the ones that grew up during Soviet rule, because they're at some point one big country. They're very, very, very different people. Even more so than Americans and Canadians, but that's a very easy place to kind of show the difference between like personality. Canadians have always been much nicer. Like I always thought of Toronto as the nicer New York. Like if New Yorkers were actually polite and kind, it'd be Toronto. But Ukrainians are much more appreciative. They're more down to earth and they're more honest. I remember thinking, a lot of this was before I ever even came here. I was brainwashed by like movies and propaganda, I guess. Saying like all Russians are bad, all Russians are villains. But the more I actually got to know Russians, I have realized that a lot of these stereotypes come from somewhere. I'm not saying all Russians are bad. There's good people everywhere. But in general, as a culture, Russians are, they've lived in a society where they can't really trust other people, especially strangers. If you can one-up someone, if you can get something over on someone, if you can make money from them, if you can jump in line, you can progress yourself forward, and it doesn't detriment you too much, they will do it. If someone gives you something for free, if you can take something from someone for free, you should do it. You should just take it, and you don't even really need to say thank you. It's just like, okay, you're stupid enough to give that to me, I will take it. And this is why in movies and in reality, there are so many, Russians who take advantage of situations or money, things like that. While Ukrainians, unfortunately, there's a lot of them who act like the Russians. They kind of looked up to them before this big invasion. They were listening to Russian music like Morgan Stern or Russian TV shows, actors, things like that, and be like, yeah, I want to be like those guys. I'm sure a lot of people in Canada also look at Americans and be like, yeah, I want to kind of be like that, I want to act more like that. Now the war has really changed everything. It's put a lot of things in perspective. I'm guilty of it too. Before the invasion, I was like, yeah, Morgan Stern's awesome. This Russian mafia stuff is awesome. It's kind of like being a fan of Sons of Anarchy or Harley Davidson riders, and then you find out that they decided to start killing kids and bombing orphanages, and you're like, oh, I guess I'm not supporting the biker gangs anymore. So Yeah, they're very, very different people. But to answer your question, I think that Ukrainians have suffered for multiple generations, and it's never been their fault. Like it's always been an external factor, usually Russia, making them suffer, and it's made them more humble, more appreciative, more down to earth, more honest, more loyal, more trustworthy. It's very similar to Taiwanese people versus people from mainland China. In China, the mentality, the culture is get money no matter how you can do it. If you can step on someone's head, if you can screw someone over, if you can get your money, if you can get ahead in life, you should do it. And if you don't do it, you're stupid. In Taiwan, it's not like that. Loyalty, trust matters much more. This is why places like in China, they would sell and were caught selling, fake baby formula.
Chinese authorities in Hunan are currently investigating a baby product shop following reports of 5 children being diagnosed with rickets after consuming fake milk powder sold by the store for their children. In an interview with Xigua Video, a woman identified as Miss Chen says that staff told her it was the best sold product in their store. This is not the first time parents in China have been sold fake products. Remember the 2008 Chinese milk scandal? At the time, 22 dairy producers in China were found to have produced milk laced with melamine, a chemical compound illegally used to artificially increase the protein content of food products. According to The Guardian, roughly 300,000 babies became sick that year after consuming contaminated milk powder.
That would be unheard of in, somewhere like in Taiwan or in Ukraine, because people's babies would literally die from this or get sick from it. But in China, at places like Russia, they're like, yeah, if you can get money from it, you can, if you're not harming your own self or your own family, you're harming someone else, and you can get rich from this, you should do it. And as far as, fighting for your lands, Russians don't really care about their land. Like they have a lot of pride with Mother Russia is so great, but you can see it as soon as Ukrainian soldiers entered, Shuja or, the Oblast of Kursk. Russians like, you know what? I'm not fighting for this. This isn't I don't care. Just don't destroy my house, my own property. Don't damage my stuff. You can do whatever you want to the government. I don't care. While in Ukraine, they're like, no, this is our land. We need to protect our land because it's all we have. But Russians are like, we don't care who the government is. We don't care who the politicians are. It has nothing to do with me. Guy Shard asks, much later on, do you think that you would like to write a book telling all your unique experiences? You always say it as it is. So personally, I would buy such a book in a flash. We love you, dear Johnny. Thank you, Guy. That's very, very nice of you. I've actually written 2 books about my life. Let me pull this up if I can. The first book is called 12 Weeks in Thailand, The Good Life and the Cheap. This was about my life living in Thailand. As a broke American who just left, sold everything, left my corporate job, moved to Thailand to pursue Muay Thai, kickboxing, and scuba diving, and working as a dive master. I was very young. I was in my 20s. So I write a lot about, trying to pick up girls at the full moon party, hooking up, partying, getting drunk, stuff like that. So that is one chapter of my life. Obviously, that's not me anymore. That was 15 plus, almost 20 years ago. So, I think if you're the same person 2 decades ago, something's wrong. But that was my first book if you want to get to know my young 20-somethings Johnny. My second book I wrote when I was living in Thailand and I finally had reached my financial and fitness goals. I've always been a chunky guy. I was always a fat kid. Finally, I figured out how to get in shape. I was really lean. And I had I fell in love, I had a great girlfriend. I was making a lot of money online, and I was like, you know what? Life changes so quickly. As soon as you set some right goals, you have the right mindset. So I wrote a book called Life Changes Quick. This is the book. That's actually my girlfriend at the time, Larissa, shout out. And you can see from the photo, I had abs. I was really good shape. And that's when I started, making a lot of money. I was actually my business. I was selling furniture, you know. I won't give away the niche because I sold the store to someone, and even though my non-disclosure agreement's long over, you know, I don't want to give them unnecessary competition. But basically, I was selling handmade furniture that was made in San Diego and in Oregon, but I'm selling it in the US to US customers. I just happened to be in Thailand running the business. You know, think of me as like the reseller. I was an authorized dealer, you know. So imagine, you know, you go to Best Buy or you go to some mom and pop store like B&H Photo and you buy like an iPad. You know, it's made by Apple. It ships from Apple to the customer, but you're the authorized dealer, so you get the wholesale price minus the retail price. That is your profit margin. And I was doing that with furniture, and I made a lot of money from that. I was running 2 stores at once. One was the one I built myself, and then one I had my girlfriend at the time build because she was an English teacher, and she, you know, I think everyone who's an English teacher, like they really like it at the beginning, and then they realize I'm just trading my time for money. It's stressful. I'm tired all the time. I can't travel. You know, let's have those vacation days. And I wanted to travel the world with her, and I was like, listen, I'm too much of a, not a cheap ass. It's definitely not the word. It was more like I wanted everything to be fair, you know? I was like, I don't want to pay for you because I feel like our relationship wouldn't be balanced then. Like I want everything to be 50-50. I want us to pay for half the rent, half the food, half the travel. And because I knew she couldn't do that as an English teacher, I said, here's access to Anton's course, antonmethod.com. I already had an account, and I was like, watch these videos, start your own store, I'll help you with it, but that can be your business, and the money you make from that, we can, you know, now we can travel and stuff like that. We ended up partnering on the store, you know, because she wasn't very business savvy, but you know, she was a hard worker, so we did 50-50 on that. But both stores did really well. I think my store was doing $30,000-$40,000 in revenue per month, and hers was doing like 15 or 20. So not as much, but still very, very good. And we were literally traveling like everywhere. We went, you know, we went to Taiwan together. We went to Malaysian Borneo together. It's a little island there to go scuba diving, to go to safari. We went to South Africa together. We went to like the wineries in Stellenbosch, and yeah, it was a really good time. Like those are memories I'll always have. But that was also a chapter in my life that, you know, now has been long closed. It's been more than 10 years ago. So I guess to answer the question, would I write another book? I would, but I don't think people read anymore. Like I think it's very sad because it takes a long time, a lot of energy to write a book. And now with AI writing books, I think it's just not worth it, to be honest. That's why I make YouTube videos. But I do like books because it can really condense a lot of experience, a lot of information into a very, a really well thought out, concise, you know, story. So I'm probably not going to write another book anytime soon, but if you piece together little stories from my YouTube videos, it's kind of like a book, right? Oh my God, oh, it's so hot in here. I just realized all my windows are closed. That's why it's so hot in here. Xander Mason asks, do people who have Russian stamps in their passport have issues getting to Ukraine? Yes and no. It depends on when the stamps were, how long ago it was, how long they were there for, if they have other stamps to like other, you know, countries. I mean, back before 2022, a lot of Ukrainians, you know, would travel back and forth to Russia because they have friends or family there. That was a big reason why I didn't think Putin would actually invade, because, you know, the whole story about Russians, Ukrainians being like one family, it's partially true. Like a lot of them have relatives. What I didn't realize would happen is the Russian relatives would side with Putin and their destruction of Ukraine and not listen to their cousins or their sisters or brothers saying, no, they're attacking us. Like Russia is attacking us. They bombed my neighbor's home. Like I almost died. And what's really sad is, and I've heard this now from dozens of people who have cut ties with their Russian relatives. Their Russian relatives is like, no, I saw on TV, I heard in Russia, it wasn't someone's home. It was a NATO command center. And the Ukrainian relative would be like, what are you talking about? This is my village. There's no NATO command center here. So that's really broken up families and the trust between the two. As far as tourists, definitely don't go to Russia now. If you do, you're a much bigger idiot than I am for being in Ukraine. At least being here, it's for a good reason, at least. Being in Russia, it's like, not only is it dangerous to be there, but second, like, the Russian government can just take you as a spy and exchange you for an actual war criminal. It's just a really bad idea. So definitely don't have any new stamps from Russia since 2022. But yeah, if you had stamps, I know a guy personally, and that's probably the next question, but Hardcore Henry says, when is Bold coming? He can't come because he has so many Russian stamps in his passport that Ukraine just looks at it. Even without knowing who he is or watching his videos, he just like, man, this guy has like 20 Russian stamps in here. Like, no, you're not coming in. Ironically, Russia also doesn't allow him to go into Russia because he said so many bad things about Putin and against the war. I'm sure a lot of people watching this are like, no, like, he said, he loves Russia, Russian culture. It's a complicated, story, like, but he's definitely against the war, and he said a lot of bad things about Putin, saying, he's an asshole. So he's not welcome in any country. So yeah, if you have a stamp from, the World Cup or something, or like some soccer match in Russia in 2020, like, you could probably come in. But if you have anything new, don't even try coming. I would like to know your opinion on how Ukraine's recent incursion into Russia will play out. Do you think that they will be able to expand further onto the territory or hinder the support weapons sent their way from the US and other Western countries? Thank you, Brittany. I'm sure everybody's been following the Ukrainian invasion and occupation into Belgorod and Kursk Oblast. This is the best thing that Ukraine's done recently to drive up morale within the country, but also, strangely, morale in the US and bring tension back. Prior to this, most Americans have stopped paying attention to what's happening in Ukraine since October 7th. And Americans kind of have a very short attention span when it comes to like hot topics around the world, especially if it doesn't directly affect, their day-to-day life. So now it's a new phase of the war. So a lot of Americans are watching again, and they're like, oh, this is interesting. The second best army in the world is now the second best army in Russia. I mean, honestly, nobody knows what's going to happen. How far they're going to be able to go. Are they going to go all the way to, the major cities in Belgorod or in Kursk, all the way to the nuclear power station? So I'm not going to speculate on that because I don't know, what their plans are. But I would say already what they've done has been very beneficial to drumming up support, not only internally, but also hopefully this will kind of give the boost to the West, to the Jake Sullivan, Biden coalition or administration, whatever you want to call it, to be like, you know what? Russia keeps drawing these red lines saying that if you do this, we'll nuke you. And this is kind of the ultimate red line cross. We are physically invading their country and occupying their territory. And they haven't even talked about nukes now because they know they're not going to use them. I mean, first off, are they really going to use a tactical nuke on their inside Russia to kill their, Ukrainian soldiers who are in their land? Are they really going to, try to bomb Kyiv or Kharkiv with a nuke? Are they going to send us to London or Washington? Like, all these are terrible options for Russia for many, many reasons. So they're not even talking about anymore. I think those threats, everybody has realized has been very empty. So now, hopefully, Washington will be like, you know what? It looks like Putin's not really going to do anything. Go ahead and just strike all the military bases that have been bombing you. Have these ballistic missiles, or these, these fighter jet bombers that have been flying and bombing you in Ukraine, go ahead and just strike them. I don't care where they are in Russia. Just strike them. Finish this up. And another big reason why Ukraine has had a lot of success. Hold on. Elena, hello.
Hello.
Привет.
Привет.
Okay. I will finish making this video, but you can start.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, дякую.
I don't do not disturb for you.
Нічого, дякую. That was my house cleaner. And, she was actually surprised because she didn't know I was going to be here instead of the tenant. I understand this is a weird situation where the landlord is living in the apartment where the tenant is renting. I know this is not normal, but our tenant landlord relationship is not normal. First off, she watches my channel, so she I guess she likes my content. She knows me, like we're friends, we hang out, we have drinks together. And she's literally been like, hey, you could just be my roommate. Like there's 2 rooms, you can stay here even when I'm here. I know you miss your apartment. And I'm like, no, like you have your space, but whenever she goes on her trips, either her diplomatic missions abroad or her vacation, not forced vacation, but her like scheduled vacation time every 2 months, she's like, Johnny, like, can you stay at the apartment and water the plants? Because she has a whole jungle of plants. Like, maybe I'll show you a video of the greenhouse now, but it's like it's a jungle of plants back there. Elena,
Yes.
you want to show this beautiful garden?
Yeah,
What we
it's a
have?
beautiful garden. I think soon have small cucumber.
Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
and I think this salad or maybe right?
Yeah.
I don't know, but very beautiful.
Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm surprised how much.
I don't know what's this plant. You know name?
She sent me the descriptions of every plant. I know this one's mint.
Yeah.
I don't know what this one is. Maybe someone will tell me. And then this is some
Tomato.
tomatoes. Oh,
Yeah. And this, look, it's very beautiful
this
basil.
basil is a big one.
Yeah.
I need to make some pesto with it.
Yeah. You very big chef.
I try. But yeah, like we have, it feels like a greenhouse, like a jungle here, So my duty is to water it every morning and missed it.
Yeah, it's very good to like grow up and have a little bit shadow.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Yeah, so nice.
So, like in her mind, like she's just very happy that I'm here to water the plants, but also take care of the apartment because, unfortunately, because of the blackouts and the surges, half the apartment doesn't have electricity. The part that does, luckily, is this living room. So this is where I can, watch TV or play PlayStation. But the kitchen and both bedrooms have no electricity at all. Mostly because this apartment is over 100 years old, and a lot of that wiring was very old, and it needs to be redone. So I'm going to be here for the next 2 weeks, and I'm going to help with I'm not the electrician, but I'm going to let the electrician in every day and make sure that there's power when she gets back. But to get back to the very important topic about why the Kursk invasion, I guess, has been a very huge success for Ukraine. Ukraine has now taken over 100 conscripts as prisoners of war for exchange. Obviously, Ukraine doesn't want to keep these 100 people because we're feeding them and we're just taking care of them. And unlike in Russia, where they're just starving the Ukrainian POWs and just leaving them in like a windowless dungeon, in Ukraine, we follow the Geneva Convention. We actually have to treat prisoners well. And it costs time, money, effort, and space to do it. So Ukraine has no, they have no benefit of holding on to these prisoners for a long time. So they captured them to exchange them. And the hope and the goal is for Russian moms and families to be like, hey, my young, 18, 19, 20-year-old son Dima was conscripted by Putin, or he was stupid enough to sign a contract. Can we have him back, please? Here's one of your soldiers that we've kept in the dungeon for the last 2 years from Azovstal. And one thing that you definitely haven't seen unless you live in Ukraine or in Kyiv especially, is every Sunday for the past 2-3 months, there's been a protest asking for the freeing of Azovstal defenders. So the defenders of Mariupol, which was almost 2 years ago. So these people have been starving in dungeons. And I know this because I have a friend who was one of the Azovstal defenders, and he came out of it during a prisoner exchange, like, probably a quarter of his weight was gone. So like imagine me, but like skin and bones, or like, half my weight. It's and not in a good way. Like these people are really, really, like, they're tortured, they're beaten. It's really, really bad. So a lot of them are Azov defenders, but a lot of them are just like, different, people who just happen to be defending Azovstal all the time. That is the goal. And I hope that in the next few weeks, in the next month, we're going to see the exchange of these conscripts from Kursk exchanged for these defenders of Azovstal. Also, it gives a big bargaining chip. I think this war, actually, let's jump to the next question on how this war is going to end. A few people asked, actually, Niramash and also Cannondale says, how do you think this war will end? Both sides are tired. The U.S. will have to help Ukraine more militarily instead of giving these peacemaker aid packages. The U.S. is by far Ukraine's biggest military contributor, which is true. Europe doesn't have a huge military. They help a lot, almost equally in terms of money, in humanitarian aid, taking in refugees and other things. But the U.S. has always been like the biggest military, which is good for us. I used to hate the military industrial complex, thinking like, oh yeah, these people are just making money off of us. But here's what I realize is all that money goes back into the U.S. economy. And also, if you have a retirement account, or if you're invested in the stock markets, especially in like a mutual fund or an index fund or the S&P 500, we are invested in the military industrial complex. Companies like Boeing or like Raytheon, all of them change their names now, so I don't know what they're called. All these are in our retirement accounts. So if you're an American and you have any type of retirement account, we are invested and we make money from the military industrial complex, which is a whole different story. But this is one of the reasons why we had the biggest, because we supply arms to different countries, different allies around the world. Russia used to do the same before they started this war, and everyone realized how terrible they are. This war and all wars end up in some kind of negotiated exchange where either, nobody's happy or, one side is, really unhappy. And we hope that Russia is going to be very unhappy with this, because the worst thing that can possibly happen is there to be a ceasefire. And this is why every time, people write, too many Ukrainian lives are being lost, we should, have peace now. We should just give Russia what they want, and we should stop this war. Most of those people are just parroting Russian talking points and propaganda, or even, unfortunately, I don't want to get to politics, but people who hate the current administration saying like, oh yeah, they failed Ukraine, they're just kind of, bleeding them dry, we're using Ukrainians to prolong the war. Guys, as someone who lives in Ukraine and knows the soldiers personally, they fight because they want to keep their country and they want to live free, and they know what happens when Russia occupies them. Even if the US stopped military aid tomorrow, they will continue to fight, and then they will lose much more lives. The only way to have long-lasting peace is either Russia to be defeated, militarily on the battlefield, politically, which probably would be internally, where Putin is ousted and there's a new anti-war president, or financially, where, Russia's financial system kind of collapses, or it's just not affordable for them to continue this war. I think that the war is going to end one of two ways. One is financially. where already this is getting to that point where Russia is losing more money than they're making. Basically Russia's two main money streams was arms sales, which is now zero because they can't even make enough for themselves. They're not selling it to India anymore and other countries. Second, financially through oil. And because Ukraine was smart enough to destroy many oil refineries, Russia now is in a deficit where instead of making money every month from refining oil and shipping out oil, they're losing money. And they can only do that for so long. They're propping up their economy now with reserves, but as anyone who's ever drained their bank accounts with no income knows, that only lasts so long. So we're actually in a very good spot right now where if things kind of stay the same even for the next 6 months or a year, Russia will eventually bleed out financially and have to stop the war. But I think actually it will end sooner. I think there's gonna be lots of negotiations starting in November. That's what people have been talking about, because as soon as there's a new US president, either one of two things that happen. Either Joe Biden is gonna try to get this war ended before he leaves office, and that way he can have this legacy of saying like, I finished the Ukraine war, I negotiated peace. Or the next president who comes in, whoever it is, hopefully someone who supports Ukraine, is gonna say like, you know what, let's get this war finished. Unfortunately, it's usually actually not even the president. I think a lot of people don't realize this, but it's usually the vice president who's the one who is negotiating military contracts and support, in Congress and things like that. And that's why, aid got held up for so long. Whole nother story, but by Ukraine taking Russian territory, that gives them a bargaining chip to exchange back for their own territory. So that's why it's important, and it's been a very good thing that Ukraine has taken so much land. So, guys, I think that's answered most of the questions, and I'm getting a bit tired from talking. This is probably a long video. Thank you so much for watching and supporting, and hopefully I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you to the channel members for your continued support. Thank you for people who use the link to buy me a coffee or a slice of pizza. It'll be very fun things to come in the next few weeks, especially as I'm going to be doing another travel trip soon. So stay subscribed, hit the like button if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye. Take care.